Yes, very interesting title. So I'm gonna tell you guys about my experience as far as growing up and how I built a certain level of hatred towards my mom now that I'm older that I do regret. But I'm gonna tell you guys about what it taught me and what I essentially learned from it. So first, here are the show notes, and it's gonna start with a little story time. So I'm gonna try to do a rough overview of my life, nothing too long. Long story short, my mom got pregnant with me when she was 19 years old. She had me when she was 20. My parents were together for approximately 5 years. She met my dad, or started dating my dad, when she was like 15. And the reason why my parents actually broke up is because my dad cheated on her, ended up having another baby. So I do have I almost said a son. Not a son. I do have a brother who is 13 months younger than me. And I feel like that kind of broke my mom. Because like, I don't know, it's like you're young, you're in love, and not only does someone cheat on you, but they have another child. So I say that to say, I was born in Connecticut, but I have no recollection of living there. Very young, we moved to Miami. And then I'll never forget, my first core memory was me at my aunt's like after party or reception of her wedding. My mom took me in the bathroom and she was like, oh, mommy has to go away for a little bit. Or no, you're gonna go. No, she said, mommy has to go away for a little bit, but it's gonna be all right, or something like that. And, or you're not gonna see mommy for a little bit, or something to that, extent. And I'm young, so I'm thinking she means for an hour, 2 hours. I don't really know. I don't have a perception of time. I'm young. But that is my first memory of life. And I say that to say, I was like, okay. And I'll never forget the song that was playing. It was R. Kelly's Step, Step, Side to Side. And to this day, I've always hated that song. Like, it's like triggering to me. And I say that to say, I didn't know it, but I was actually going to be going to Detroit with my grandparents, which is her mom and her stepdad. But it's basically, that's my grandpa. They've been together since like the 80s. That's my grandpa. But I say that to say I was there for a while. And during that time period, I start forming like anxiety. I start forming certain forms of anger because I'm like, how could she leave me? Like, me and my mom were like, it's just us. Like, I didn't really have it. Like, I don't have a recollection of my dad growing up. And I'm the only child on her, like, you know what I'm saying? So for her, so it's like, we're two peas in a pod. Like, how could you leave me? And I ended up forming like a lot of hate towards her. And I did it because I knew if I didn't hate her, I was gonna be sad. Because I couldn't figure out why she would leave me. I couldn't figure out what I did. Like, what did I do to make you leave me? Like, why wasn't I good enough? So she ended up eventually coming back to get me, but I had changed a lot. And I think she noticed it too, because she said one of the things she first noticed when she got back was that I was biting my nails. And ever since then, I've been a very avid nail biter. It's one of the things that I struggle with a lot. And she was just saying before I went to Detroit, I didn't bite my nails. I say that to say when we did move back to Miami, I kind of in my head had like a mindset of like, don't trust her. Like, she's gonna leave you again. Like, don't put your trust in her. Don't even love her. So I built a lot of like hatred and resentment towards her because I was scared. Because the thing I didn't want to happen again was her to leave me and then me be distraught and me be sad. And so I bonded with people. I definitely could say I bonded with people more than her. It was easier for me to build relationships with people and talk to people and be open to people than it was on my own mom, because I didn't want her to get in. You get what I'm saying? I didn't want her to get to know me. Mind you, I'm young at this time. I'm 5, 6, 7, 8, feeling this way. And I'll never forget, there was one night that I was sleeping in her bed, and I was probably like 6 years old at the time. I was sleeping in her bed. I never forget waking up and not feeling her there. I don't know if I had to pee or what woke me up, but I was feeling for her body on the bed and I couldn't feel it. I'm like, Mom. And I had no response. So she had a bathroom inside of her room. So I went inside the bathroom. She wasn't in there. And I'll never forget breaking down crying. And it was a little bit out of fear. I was young, home alone, thinking. But at the same time, I was mad at myself for loving her again. I felt like, mind you, I'm 6 years old. And I felt like, this is what you get, Shemaya. You see, told you she was going to leave you again. That's what she is. She's a leaver. She's going to leave you. She doesn't care about you. So you shouldn't care about her. And I remember going into the living room, walking into the living room. It was a small little apartment, so it wasn't that much walking. And seeing my aunt, her younger sister, which is her younger sister, and like one or two of her friends in the living room. And I remember kind of crying. I'm like, where's my mom? And they were like, oh, your mom's gonna be back in the morning. She just went out. And she was back in the morning. But something inside of my brain still told me, like, no, she really wanted to leave you. No, she was gonna leave you. And so I started building up just more and more hatred to her, so much so that I would do things to like hurt her. Like, you hurt me, I'm gonna get you back. So like, I remember one day, you know, in school you do arts and crafts. She put one of my arts and crafts on the refrigerator, and I got mad and I ripped it up and I threw it inside of her bathroom garbage on purpose because I wanted her to be hurt. Like, yeah, I made this thing for you and you liked it. Yeah, well, look at me destroy it. And I would just do little things like that, and I just wouldn't talk to my mom. And then when I was 9 or 10, she angered me even more, and we moved back to Connecticut. Mind you guys, last time I left Connecticut, I used to go sometime during the summertime, but like last time I remember living there, I lived there, I have no recollection of. So to me, my home is Miami. That's where my friends are. That's where my family is. But I do have family, of course, in Connecticut because that's where she's from. My dad's from. The only reason we moved to Miami is because her dad moved to Miami in like the 80s or so. And he ended up getting married or whatever, and, you know, having kids or whatever, which are like my aunts and stuff down there, my cousins and stuff down there. And my mom ended up going to college in Miami too. She went to Florida Memorial. I think it's now something else. Something else. I don't think it's like a university or something, like something in the name of university, but she went there, but she had to drop out because she had me. So I say that to say I was so mad at her. She was like, oh, we're moving back to Connecticut. And I'm like, back? I don't even know, like, what? Like, Connecticut, like, what? And I was so mad at her because I felt like she was ripping me away from my home again. Like, you're like, I felt like you do everything to hurt me. Like, all you want to do is hurt me. And that's genuinely how I felt. And long story short, lived in Connecticut. I hated it subsequently. I mean, it's freaking Connecticut, no offense. So we lived in Connecticut from my age like 9, 10 to like 18. And when we lived there, we moved in with my aunt. And we lived in like a suburban working class neighborhood, which is not where I grew up in Miami. And it was just different. And even much so for the first couple years, like me, my mom, and my little sister, she had my little sister when I was 6. We lived inside the same bed. We slept inside the same bed for like most of the time. I mean, not most of the time, for a few years. And then eventually, my other aunt who was living there moved out. So then we got that room. And so me and my sister shared a room until I was 18. So I say that to say it wasn't the smoothest, you know, transition. And even living in Miami, like we bounced around a lot. From like Miami to Fort Lauderdale, different places. By the time I was like 9 or 10, I had lived in like 9 different places, 3 different states, a multitude of different cities. And I just wasn't used to like, I guess, consistency to stability. And it caused me to become very overly independent, like hyper actively independent, because it was a sense of like, if my mom can't care for me, like just in case she leaves me, I have to make sure I'm secure. I have to make sure I'm straight. And I say that to say I built up hate for her, and she never even had any inclination of it until I never forget, for my 12th birthday, she drove me and my best friend to New York. And you know, music played on the radio, all this other stuff, and they played R. Kelly, step, step, side to side, turn it around. And I said, turn it off. And she was like, what? And I was like, turn that song off. Like, I don't like that song. And I said it with such conviction that she was just like, what's wrong with it? Like, what? Like, what's wrong? And I said, that's the song you left me to. And the song was changed. And the topic wasn't really talked about, but I think she kind of felt it. Because the thing is, my mom never knew that I remembered that night. In her mind, it was just like, I'm young, I'm not gonna remember. But I did. Like I said, that was my first ever memory. And I say that to say, over the years, I really I didn't really look at my mom like a mom. I had a lot of hatred towards her because I was scared to love her, because even though I got to a certain age, it was just that kid in me that was like, she's gonna leave you again, whether it's mentally, physically, like she's not gonna be here for you, so be here for yourself. So like I said, I became very overly, hyperly independent. And then I didn't look at her like a mom. I kind of looked at her as a caregiver. So like, I didn't talk to her. I didn't have like conversations really about anything I really cared about with her. Even so much so that when I got my first period, I didn't even tell her about it. And it's the crazy part is, it's not like I hid it from her, but I so much so did not look at her like a mom. I didn't know why am I telling her? Like, why would I tell her? Mind you, I was like 11, 12 years old. And I'm thinking in my head, actually, no, I think I was younger than that when I got my first period, because I was in elementary school. But long story short, I'm thinking in my head, why would I tell my mom that I got my period? Like, it's crazy to think that. And it wasn't me even trying to be malicious at that time period. It was just I detached myself so much from her that I didn't look at her as a mom. And she ended up finding out a couple months later because ended up getting in like some of my underwear. And I say that to say just pivotal moments like that. Like, I would do things purposely, or like I wouldn't tell her about certain things. I remember one time in choir, I sung a solo and I didn't even tell her, and she didn't find out until like a couple months after. And she was kind of like sad about it, like, why wouldn't you tell me so I can go? And I was just like, oh. And it wasn't like, when I was younger, it was me being malicious, but when I got older, I detached myself so much from her that like moments like that she would have wanted to share with me, and just things like that, I just didn't think of it because I didn't look at her as a mom. Because younger me was like, it's just gonna hurt you. She's gonna hurt you again. And I say that to say, I had a lot of hatred towards her until I was probably like 19. And then we talked about certain things, and I kind of understood certain things, right? So then she explained a lot to me, and she was like, the reason why she, left me, well, she had me go to Detroit with my grandparents, was because she said she was a young mom at the time and she couldn't take care of me. So in her mind, she was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Miami. I'm gonna, get us a place to live. Like, mind you, she also was in school too. So she had went back to college, and she was just like, I'm gonna get us a place to live, and I'm gonna do all this. And like, she did that because she wanted better for me. And she knew at the time, like, she couldn't give that to me, but she wanted to. And me, my entire life, for a long time growing up, I was always like, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't my own mom want me? Like, what did I do that was so, and I felt that way. And I was mad at her because I felt like she made me feel that way. And I say that to say the whole time, it's like, it was nothing wrong with me. She just wanted better for me. And I didn't understand that, And I say that to say, the whole situation was also moving to Connecticut. She had lost her job, kind of like during the recession, she lost her job. So there was that. And then there were just little things throughout my life that I noticed, like, she wasn't there for certain things, or she couldn't do certain things because like she was working. You get what I'm saying? And for her, it was like either I provide for you, to have clothes and shoes and stuff like that, or I go to a recital. And I'm over here like, my mom's not here. Like, my mom, she doesn't love me. She doesn't care about me. And it's like, she just cares so much. And even living in my aunt's house for 8 years. And I know that some people are like, wow, that's crazy. The reason why she did that is because, first, like I said, we were living like a suburban working class neighborhood or whatever. And she liked that because she didn't grow up like that. She grew up in like the hood or whatever. And when we lived in Miami, we kind of lived in the hood. And for her, it was a thing of like, and once I got older, she told me, she was like, it was hard because like even family members would talk about her like, oh, you still living there, but why don't you get out her house or whatever. And disclaimer, my mom was paying her rent and stuff like giving her money. It wasn't like we were just freeloading. But I say that to say, my mom was like, she was trying to save up her money. My mom wanted to get a house, and she was just like, but also things like seeing us like play in the snow, and like we had a yard to play in, and we used to rake the leaves, and my mom used to make snowmen with us. She was like, she knew that if we lived like in a hood or whatever, in a different neighborhood, we wouldn't be able to experience some of those things. And she didn't experience some of those things growing up. And so she did it in a sense of, we were living in a good neighborhood and we had a good experience, and we went to a good school system, and like it was a safe, don't get me wrong, every neighborhood is whatever, but it was like a safer neighborhood. And she did all that. And then by the time I turned 18 to go to college, she got a house. And it's crazy because all the family members and stuff, they talk about her, half them don't even have a house now. So it's like, at least she did something in those 8 years. But I say that to say, when I was a kid, I was mad at it, and I was frustrated because even growing up, like, all my friends had cars and all my friends had all this other stuff, and like I kind of didn't. And like a lot of stuff I had, like I worked for it. You get what I'm saying? But now I like appreciate it now that I'm older, like the work ethic that I have and different things like that. But at the time I was frustrated at my mom because of it. And that's the story time of that, right? Done crying. But I say that to say, I was hurt by that situation, and I never, I guess you could say, recovered from it, healed with it, dealt with it, so much so that I passed it on to my dad, right? So during this time period, my mom was always a single mom, and my dad wasn't really there as far as even for me, as far as even when I moved to Connecticut, like living in Miami, I used to always say, oh, I don't see my dad that much because, you know, he lives in a different state, he whatever. But then when I moved to Connecticut, we moved like 15 minutes away from each other, and I still basically saw him as much as I saw him when I lived in Miami. And I mean, I can count on my hand how many events my dad has been to, as far as I played basketball, I played lacrosse, I played volleyball, I sung in a choir for 4 years, I cheerleaded, I did a lot of stuff. And I can honestly count on my hand like how many games and like events like that my dad has been to. And I say that to say, I never gave any of that like passive aggressiveness or hatred towards my mom, towards my dad, that I gave to my mom. In my eyes, my dad never did anything wrong. Like in my eyes, my dad was like, even though my dad wasn't really there, oddly enough, and I talked about this in a previous video, I don't know why I thought I was a daddy's girl. Girl, you barely know this man. And I really thought I would, like, I thought that I was. And then once I came to terms with my mom in that situation, I passed on the hate to my dad, because I was like, you know what? This is your fault. You weren't the one that was here. You weren't the one that did this. And you weren't there for me. And my mom was working and you did, at least you could have helped. And that's how I felt about that. And I say that to say, during that time period, I learned a few things, right? I learned first and foremost, a lot of the times the hatred that we have towards individuals, the way we feel towards individuals, a lot of times comes out of fear. And I feel like, even not just me, I feel like in general, a lot of times, a lot of people blame the parent that stays, because it's so easy to blame that person and give your anger to that person and express it towards that person, because you know that person is going to be there. Like, even though me and my mom, like I said, I always had in the back of my mind she was going to leave and all these other things, it was easier for me to put all that on her because she was there. My dad wasn't. So when I saw him, the little bit time that I got, it was like he was amazing, because it's like, I know he's not going to be here. I know he's not going to leave. So in this little second I got with him, this little hour, 2-3 hours, I'm going to love him so much. But with my mom, when I get back to my mom, ugh. And I'm not saying my mom is perfect. She has her faults that she does, but I definitely noticed the big difference between the two, as far as like the treatment, as far as what I would do. And I say that to say, a lot of times, like I said, we have hatred because of fear. We're afraid of something. Whether we're afraid of someone doing something to us, whether we're afraid of another situation happening, us feeling a certain way, but we pour it out as hatred, right? I hate that person. I did that. I really dislike that person. A lot of times that roots in fear. You're so afraid of that person. The capacity they have over you, right? The strength they have over you, the whatever that you feel like they have over you, it's rooted in fear. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people have to come to terms with. And growing up, my mom always loved mob movies. Like, that's one thing we always like used to watch, like The Godfather, and I can't even think of them all, right? That's the first thing I thought of, because I'm about to talk about a quote from there. But we watch all them growing up. And one of the quotes is from The Godfather. It's not from verbatim. I don't remember the exact quote. Sorry. But it was something to the effect of, never hate your enemy because it clouds your judgment. Right? And the quote kind of means like, and it's obviously in a mafia type term, but they're saying like, don't hate somebody because how you can't control your hate, right? If you hate somebody and you see them in the middle of the street, you might knock them out, but it could be a police officer right next to them. Mind you, you like, oh, I hate this person. Now you about to go to jail, or you about to, because you hate them. You're not calculated enough. You're not thinking. Your conscience is not telling you, maybe you should wait to knock them out. Maybe you should. And so I realized that as well when it comes to the fear aspect of it. Sometimes we look at things as, oh, I hate that person, and we don't realize how it makes us act irrational. We don't realize how it makes us act certain ways, and it roots in fear, right? And like I said before, also, you pass it on, because that's all I did. I didn't deal with the situation, so I passed it on to my dad. In a sense of the quote, hurt people. I still was hurt. I ain't let that hurt go. I just was like, all right, I don't hate her no more, but I need something to be mad at. I need some, and I say that to say my daddy wasn't there. So it's not like it was some irrational passing in my mind, but I can honestly say it was unnecessary in a sense of, I realized no matter how much hate you have, how much anger you have, it only affects you and you can't change the past. I say to say it only affects you because I thought after I expressed to my mom how I felt, I would get a certain feeling. I thought that even when it comes to my mom specifically, right? I thought once I expressed to her, she would be like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she did apologize, but I thought she was going to apologize for how I felt. I felt like she left me deserted. I felt like she made me feel like I couldn't trust her. I felt like she made me feel like there was something wrong with me because why would my own mother leave me? I thought when she responded to me, she was going to acknowledge all those things. But then her response made me look at the situation differently and actually feel bad for her and her situation. But I never would have thought that. And I'm not saying in a sense of, oh, that makes everything okay. Oh, that makes everything good. But I think you also have to come to understanding that just because you feel some way, there's nothing that other individual is going to say or do that's going to help you come to terms with the situation unless you come to terms with the situation. And I had to come to terms with the fact that, you know what? My mom did what she did and I felt how I felt. But it's either I'm going to choose to work on this. I'm going to choose to learn how to work through this, or I'm going to keep feeling this way, because that person will never feel how you feel. Even with my dad, right? I told you guys, after a while, I started having hatred towards him because all this and that. And I held that in for a few years too. And it wasn't until this past summer I told him how I felt. And I'll never forget, his response was not what I thought it was going to be. Right? I thought he was gonna be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. And it wasn't really that. And we're crying to my mom about it, like, he doesn't even understand how I feel, he's not even acknowledging it. And my mom told me something to this certain extent of, either you're gonna accept him for who he is, or you're just gonna not choose to deal with him anymore and just accept the situation. So the thing I thought I was going to get out of it, right? Telling him how I feel, him apologizing, I didn't get that. And I had to come to terms with that in a sense. So first and foremost, you can't expect yourself out of people. Like, because I expected him to say this and I expected him to say that because that's what I would say. But then at the same time, if this was me, I wouldn't have done this to myself. So understand, you can't tell somebody how to react to something. And you can't expect somebody to react the way you want them to. And like my mom said, obviously it depends on the individual. You either have to accept the situation or accept the person for who they are and move through it and work on it. But you can never change the past. Understand that no matter what they say, even if he did apologize, even if he did say, I'm so sorry, I regret everything I did, which he didn't exactly, but I realized I'm still a fatherless child because now I'm a woman. As a child, I didn't have a father growing up. Even if to this day we have the best relationship and even this past New Year's, me and my dad and my stepmom spent together and it was the best New Year's I had, and I can't tell you how long, but I say that to say it will never take away the fact that I was a fatherless child. Now I want to be a woman with a father, but it never will take that away, no matter what he says, no matter what he does. So I have to come to terms with that because I can't change the past and he can't change the past either. Even if that, like I said, even if that person does regret doing something, even if my mom said, I think my mom does wish she would have talked to me more growing up in the sense of explaining the situation, explaining certain things, because she didn't. But at the same time, even if she did, things would be different to a certain extent. I don't know how different, kind of like the butterfly effect, but I say that to say it happened. And I think a lot of times we dwell on things and we wish things would change and how my life would be differently. But if you dwell on that for so long, you live in that. You live in that mindset of different. And then you grow a hatred because you're like, I will be different. I will be different. I used to say that all the time. My life would be different if she didn't. And my life would be different if she didn't. And sometimes that different could be worse. Worse. And you don't even know that. So I learned to deal with the situation instead of wishing it never happened. Because you can't, like, it happened. You're going to just stay stuck in that time period. You're going to move physically. You're going to move It's so many different ways, but never mentally, never in your heart. It's always going to be stuck there. And I feel like you're never going to be able to fully love yourself and fully experience things and fully, because there's a part of you that regrets even being in that position, matter good or bad. You get what I'm saying? Where you are now, because you're like, because you keep dwelling on and wishing that certain things didn't happen in the past, not knowing if those things didn't happen, you could be a worse position, a worse individual. And so one way I've been learning to deal with it is doing shadow work. I think a lot of times, even with myself, we think that we're over things and we don't care about things, and things are, and I thought that way about both my parents until certain things would trigger me, right? I would see a little girl in the store with her dad, and I never forget, I saw this little girl, she had like a juice or something, and she wanted a toy, and her dad was like, you can only get one, like, you know, little tiny little $2 toys, and he was like, I told you can only get one. And she was like, daddy, but daddy, and he was like, all right. And I remember kind of tearing up a little bit. I was working too, made it even worse. But not tearing, like not, you know, tears going on my eyes, but just getting a little teary-eyed because I wish I had that with my dad. And there's something inside of me that knows I never could have that because I'm an adult now. Like that feeling of confiding, like just feeling of like my daddy will do it for me. My daddy will. And I had to come to terms with that, right? And I realized there's certain things that still trigger me, even though I got over them. Even with my mom. And so one thing I've been working on is shadow work. Working on the things that are deep inside of you, right? So I've been trying to do it with definitely therapy. I'm starting therapy really soon, which I'm very excited about. Meditating, journaling. You could go on Google and look up different ways to do shadow work. But those are the things that I've been trying to do and I've been trying to focus on. And even getting my mind and my physical in the right place, because I realized that thing is always going to trigger me. That thing is always going to bother me until I deal with it. You can't jump over it. You can't forget it. Don't think, oh, I'll just forgive that person and get over it. I get people say forgive and forget, but I meant forgive, don't forget. But it's like, I truly don't think you can forgive somebody just by having a conversation, in my opinion. Because I feel like, especially if you've been holding on to that thing for so long, you have to learn how to work on it. So you need to learn how to work on you. But I say that to say, those are all the things that, you know, having this strong dislike, this strong hatred to my mom made me realize. And I kind of do regret it in a sense, but then I also realized that I may not be where I am now if all that stuff didn't happen and I didn't feel that way. So I'm coming to terms with it, you know, instead of regretting it, coming to terms with the situations and even things you do. Like I was so sad once I found out my mom's situation, because I'm like, oh, I hated her for so long. Oh, I da. But it's like, don't regret it. Come to terms with it. And now treat her better. And now be a better daughter. And now have a better relationship. But it all started with me coming to terms with it and doing the shadow work and working on me. So thank you guys so much. I know that was an emotional one. But I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to like tell you guys more about me, open up more about me. So there's that. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And what are some things that you guys feel like you can do for shadow work, or any kind of shadow work you guys feel like y'all want to work on? Y'all don't have to talk about a particular situation in the comments, just like anything that you feel like you can do, or if you've done shadow work and things have helped for you, whether meditating, journaling, whatever. What are some of those things? Because I also want to know more things too. Like I just mentioned a few little things, but I want to know more to work on myself better. So thank you guys so much and have a great one.